Hello. Okay, we are up to chapter 13, Unlucky for Some. And we see ourselves, I've got to remind myself, that's right, Ophelia is about, and we've heard Gazillion as well. So Nine's feeling a little bit unsettled. Every muscle in Nine's body tensed. "Oh, I've been watching you," said the witch, "watching you for a very long time." "I knew someone was following me," Nine growled. "That was you, wasn't it? What do you want? What are you doing here?" The witch gestured to the shop. "Oh, running a little business, revealing a few secrets, running a few lives." She smiled her dark and dangerous smile. "I'm having a little fun." "I don't like it when you have fun," Nine said sourly. The witch gave a tinkling laugh. She walked towards Nine until there were only a couple of inches separating them from each other. "Then you are terribly boring. Perhaps I should make life more interesting for you." She stared pointedly at Nine. "As I did for your mother." Nine flinched at the mention of her ma, but held the witch's gaze. You knew my ma?" "Oh, yes," said the witch, in her smooth voice. The witch extended her hand and held Nine's chin, examining her. Nine pulled herself free. "Don't say my brother neglected to tell you that." "Yes," Nine said tightly. "Funnily enough, he did leave that bit out. The witch tutted. "He always ignores anything that makes him uncomfortable. Terrible at facing up to things, you see, my foolish brother. He does so hate it when stories end badly." "Badly? But there's something he hasn't realised," said the witch, smiling sweetly. She leaned forwards and whispered in Nine's ear. "The story has not ended yet." Nine pulled away and stared at Flabbergast's sister. Hate, confusion, and concern flurried around inside her. There were so many emotions. Nine had no idea which one was to explode first. "What did you do to my ma?" Nine growled. The witch let out a tinkling little laugh again that made Nine's blood freeze and boil all at the same time. "I'm not going to tell you," the witch replied in a sing-song voice. She eyed Nine. "Unless you have another very good secret to sell." Nine narrowed her eyes. "I don't think so." She caught the half-smile of the witch's face as she moved back towards the door. She felt for the handle in the gloom and her hand clasped around it. "I'm not selling you anything," Nine said over her shoulder. The doormat in front of her lit up with the blood-red letters. "You already have. Enjoy your secret." Nine yanked on the handle and screwed her eyes up in pain at the light from outside. She stuffed her secret jar into her satchel, then shielded her eyes with her hand. She turned back to look at the secret shop of secrets. There was nothing there, just the sound of an invisible door shutting behind her, followed by a distant, cold, tinkling laugh. The candle poked from the flap of the satchel, and the little flame popped up. "Ooh, she's a nasty bit of work, and no mistake. She seems to know a lot about everything, does she?" "Yes," said Nine, her mind buzzing as she marched back towards the house park. "Too much." "Ooh, but I can't wait for you to open that secret jar," the candle prattled on. "Can I watch? Can I? Can I?" "Shh," hissed Nine. I've got more important things to think about than other people's silly secrets." Her head was indeed filled with so many swirling thoughts, just like a secret trapped in a jar. She felt slightly sick. If the witch had known her ma, she had surely done something to her ma, and knowing the witch, it wasn't something very pleasant. Thud. Nine was taken aback as her knees crashed into something. She looked down and saw a disgruntled gargoyle. "Oi, which way you going?" said Kaz from nowhere, underneath the massive hat that completely blocked her vision. Nine reached over and pulled the hat from Kaz's head. "Why don't you?" she snapped. "Can't see with me hat on, can I now?" Kaz said. "You don't even like hats," Nine grumpily said. "Might have changed my mind." Before Nine had the chance to reply, Bonehead strolled into view, still wearing his pink, fluffy new socks and humming away to himself. He twirled the parasol contentedly over the shoulder. The basket floated behind him, packed to overflowing with a miniature lamppost, a small pot plant with flimsy draping branches waving around like tentacles, the covered cage, a brass bed warming pan, surely a lifetime supply of pancake mix, and many other things that Nine didn't even recognise. Bonehead's thin fingers wiggled with delight, and he plucked the cloth-covered cage from the shopping basket, which seemed to breathe a sigh of relief and float that little bit higher. Bonehead, the cage! I know, said Bonehead, the skeleton. It's almost as thrilling as the socks. Nine held her tongue. Although she couldn't tell from the skeleton's expression how happy he was, his little fluffy socked bounce made it perfectly clear. Fine, said Nine with a sigh. Look, we need to get back to the house. Dish and Spoon need to sort the formula out before Ophelia turns up demanding her crockery back, or we will end up looking like Bonehead. Besides, I have a bone to pick with the wizard. She looked at hundreds of the houses. Now, where did we park? There was a soft, distant boom. A sickly green smoke wavered above the houses. Never mind, said Nine, heading for the smoky trail. Come on. They made their way towards the house. Nine could hear Dish and Spoon arguing in muffled and distant voices from inside. Her heart sank. It didn't sound like finding the formula for Ophelia had gone particularly well. Oh dear, said Bonehead. I believe we're doomed. You always believe we're doomed, grumbled Nine. Flabbergast stood at the front door and ushered them in. He poked his head outside and looked around nervously, then swiftly shut the door behind them all. You'll never guess who I've just bumped into. Your sister. Flabbergast's eyes widened in dismay. She sends her love to you, by the way, said Nine, pointing her finger at Flabbergast. You didn't tell me she knew my ma. Where did you? Flabbergast sneezed violently and glared at Kaz's hat. That's what we've been keeping quiet. What did your sister do to her? Madam, said Flabbergast, flushing red, I do not know what you are talking about. All I know is that they were friends and then they were not. And this is no time for election family history. Make haste, madam, he said. One Scythian has told my aunt that we have undished-napped dish. She will be furious, mark my words. She may appear at any moment, and we're not exactly ready. He grabbed the floating, struggling basket and dragged it a little way down the hallway. Where on earth are you going to put all that? Said Kaz, peeping from under her hat as the wizard grabbed an armful of shopping from the basket. Flabbergast ignored her question, but moved towards the cupboard under the stairs, which bore a sign that read, Never open this door. He yanked it open. Leave the cage, Bonehead said, wagging a bony finger at the wizard, as Flabbergast shoved handfuls of shopping inside the cupboard. The basket shrank smaller and smaller as more and more stuff was then removed. They were friends, and then they were not. Nine grabbed the pot plant before it was hurled inside and prodded one of the waving tentacles. It slapped her hand lightly, then went on waving as if it was dancing to inaudible music. I want to know what happened, Nine said, Flabbergast back, as he continued to empty the basket. The wizard paused for a moment. Then he turned around and met Nine's eyes. You may find, madam, that some things are best left in the shadows. The basket was finally empty and back to the size of a matchbox. It zipped back down the hallway, repeatedly butting the door until Eric lumbered over it to open it. Nine watched as the basket whizzed away in joyful freedom, presumably intending never to shop with them ever again. Flabbergast rubbed his nose and reached for Kaz's hat. I told you not to... Achoo! I'm keeping my hat, said Kaz, lifting her head to peer out defiantly from underneath the brim. Flabbergast pointed a finger at her and was opening his mouth to retort when Spoon's frustrated voice floated down from the kitchen. Ah, one ingredient, just one blasted ingredient missing from our formula. Remember, when Spoon talks, I decided not to go with a Scottish accent because I'm struggling still. Not with Spoon, I mean Dish. We said Dish was up north also, but she's Liverpoolian. And Spoon is Scottish because that's what it says in the book. But so far there's no description of whether Dish is Scottish like Spoon. So I've gone all creative and put her Liverpoolian, remember? Or just putting that out there. Nine sighed. She hated to admit it, but Flabbergast was right this time. They had more pressing problems than discovering what had passed between her ma and Flabbergast's sister. She headed down the hallway. Eric came lolloping out of the kitchen and met her at the doorway, his eye wide and relieved. Lady back! Lady safe! He looked deep into Nine's eyes. Lady fine? Nine took Eric's hand in her own, hoping the squeeze she gave it made up for everything. She hated herself for not trusting him with her ma's secret, her own secret, and she hated herself even more for hurting the troll's feelings. Lady's fine. Eric gave a wonky, tusky smile. Nine frowned as she peered past him and saw Dish and Spoon standing by the table in front of a large bowl of pink gloop. Both were covered with splats of stuff, and each clutched half of a torn piece of paper. Oh dear, cried Dish, wiping some pink gloop from her nose. We surely tried every ingredient with our halves of the formula. Why will it not turn gold? She wants gold, not pink. Ah, how can it still be pink? Spoon groaned, unsheathing his sword and stabbing the bowl of pink gloop with every word he said. Nine slammed the pot plant on the table, then put her hands on her hips. I've had enough secrets for one day, for 1 year in fact. Look, an angry, unpredictable aunt is about due, wanting some serious answers, and you still have not managed to make her not exactly gold. Will someone at least tell us what the not exactly gold actually is? Everyone looked at Dish and Spoon. Dish and Spoon looked at each other. Spoon gave a loud sigh and flicked one of the pink blobs from his kilt. Ah, it's just like gold, lass, unless you know what you're looking for. Just can't do Scottish accent. Why would she want fake gold? Said Nine. Professor Dish, demanded Flabbergast, whatever is going on? The material has a special property. Dish's cheeks began to blush. She looked at Spoon nervously. It can magnify thought, memory, but more commonly, power. It's called star gold. Flabbergast's mouth dropped open. Surely the existence of star gold is just a centuries-old tale told by Magdalene the completely and utterly unreliable in her book of the giant snail disaster of 1332. She tells of substance that magnifies power, but of a great cost to the one who wields it. He turned to look at Dish and Spoon. It magnifies power. The wizard tugged handfuls of hair. And you're planning to hand this over to Ophelia, the unpredictable, the most unstable, power-hungry witch in all of the realms? We didn't know Gazillion was going to hand it over to Ophelia, Dish protested. Not until she tracked me down in impatience and trapped me in this tap shop, this and that shop. And all because you wanted to get your hands on a little bit of magic. Yeah, it was a mistake, said Dish, putting her hands where her hips would have been if she had been a perfectly circular shape. Her eyes became watery. Gazillion was very persuasive, and all my years of experiments have brought me nothing but misery and failure. In truth, I have nothing to show for it. Have you ever wanted something or done something just to prove your own worth? Ever? Flabbergast looked hurt and was silent. Nine suspected in his mind he was replaying all the hopscotch championships he had ever taken part in, and thinking again of his lack of magical powers. She had never thought of him as Flabbergast the Unworthy, but that was his name, the name that was bestowed upon him. Anyway, we have no choice now, lad, snapped Spoon. We only needed enough to make one blasted locket, and we can't even get that right. Locket, said Nine. The secret shop of secrets, Mr. Downs. The guilt came flooding back. That was what I was asked to make with the star gold. That was what I was asked to make with the star gold, said Dish miserably. Well, she doesn't sound very miserable, does she? That was what I was asked to make with the star gold, said Dish miserably. I guess it was so that Ophelia could catch it and carry it with her always. That's the kind of power you want to keep close to your chest. Flabbergast nodded. And I dread to think what will happen if we don't get it to her. She's got rather a history with lockets. You should have seen what she did to Uncle Mortimer the Unwise when he sold her favourite locket to this and that shop to pay for her ever-increasing dragon droppings collection. He grimaced at the memory of it. Shall we just say it caused a considerable mess in many more ways than one? Your whole family is a considerable mess, snapped Nine. Speaking of which, you'll never guess where I bumped into your sister. The secret shop of secrets. What? What was she doing there? Flabbergast groaned again and sank into the kitchen chair. A nice little trade by the looks of things, Nine said curtly, narrowing her eyes at the wizard. Flabbergast thudded his head down into the table, his arms dropping limply by his sides. Why did she have to be here? Never mind your flaming sister. That's Spoon. Never mind your flaming sister, said Spoon. We've got enough trouble with your aunt. Why do they both have to be here? Moaned Flabbergast into the tabletop. I knew we were doomed, droned Bonehead, collapsing into a rattly bony heap on the chair opposite him. Not even Fluffy Socks can make up for this being doomed. We are not doomed, said Nine. We just need to work out a way in which the situation caused by you, she pointed to Flabbergast, Dish and Spoon, and probably you, giggled a high-pitched voice from Nine Satchel. Nine froze. Dish and Spoon frowned. Nine let out a small cough, which she hoped sounded convincing. Sorry, my throat is funny. You should visit the apothecary, madam, said Flabbergast, still face down, and ask for a remedy. Spoon pointed at Nine's satchel with the hand not holding parchment. Let me read that bit again. Spoon pointed at Nine's satchel with the hand not holding parchment, opened his mouth to speak. Spoon pointed at Nine's satchel with the hand not holding the parchment, opened his mouth to speak. Sorry, third time lucky. There was a sudden sound of insistent knocking on the door, and Flabbergast lifted his head sharply from the table. Open the door, dear. Why don't we have a lovely cup of lovely tea you mentioned? Came Ophelia's rich, spiky voice. If only Aunt Ophelia was the green-horned Minotaur. I've just the remedy from this and that shop, said Flabbergast. He paused. I think on the whole I'd prefer the Minotaur. More knocking. Flabbergast, I must insist. Gazillion reports you have something of mine, and it would be terrible shame if we fell out over this, dear. There was a sound of sharp-heeled shoe kicking on the door. Flabbergast the unworthy, screeched Ophelia. Open this door at once, you wretched boy. That dish is mine. But then the kicking stopped. She gone? Asked Eric, looking at Nine with his wide eyes. If she has, said Nine, I bet it won't be for very long. Strawberry tea? Gasped Flabbergast as he hurried down the hallway to the kitchen. If my aunt does get in, we'll need to pacify her. There's nothing better than the finest tea in all the realms for calming the soul. Eric, put the kettle on and fetch the teapot. The wizard was reaching for the tea cupboard when a strange rattling came from the arched door on the right-hand side of the kitchen. Is it the sometimes dead waking up? Because that really isn't going to help us right now, said Nine, feeling every muscle in her body tensing. The sometimes dead were Flabbergast's relatives who didn't exactly live in the crypt because they were dead, but had a tendency to wander about from time to time. Eric backed away from the door in alarm and promptly collided with the bucket that collected the orange gloop which dripped from the ceiling. Oops, he cried, his mouth downturned as the teapot flew from his hands and smashed on the floor. His long-nailed hands flew to his cheeks. Poor teapot. Everyone else watched as the bucket went flying across the kitchen, sending orange gloop hurtling in Dish and Spoon's direction. With a stomach-churning splat, a pea-sized glob of orange gloop splattered onto the tiny pink patch still on Spoon's kilt. Oh, my, said Bonehead. The pink, cried Dish. It's turning gold. Of course. When she had thrown the bucket of gloop over the man-eating starflower in the conservatory once before, it had changed the petals into a golden colour. I don't think it's changing colour, said Nine, staring in disbelief. Something's happening. As it's meant to, breathed Dish. I think that means... And the gold was now sparkling, fizzing on Spoon's kilt, as if the orange gloop had triggered a reaction with the other ingredients, woken up from a deep sleep, and was now very much alive. Spoon had frozen, not looking pleased that something very much alive was fizzing on his kilt. A little shiver ran down Nine's spine. Strange combination of ingredients had created something. Was this star gold? But Nine didn't have time to ask. With a magnificent whoosh, a stream of glittering emerald fragments came shooting forcefully through the keyhole and landed on the brick-paved floor. The tiny green pieces swiftly built up from the ground, layering glitter upon glitter until they took form, the form of an extremely furious aunt. And that takes us to chapter 14.